What's up, Catcher U families? It's Jack Farrick, founder and owner of Catchers U. Today, we have a special YouTube episode for you with Angela Gordon, and she is the owner, or she's co-owner of Advanced Kinetics in McLean. And we're going to let her just talk about herself real quick, and then we're going to hop into today's episode.
Hey everyone, Angela Gordon. I own Advanced Kinetics along with another business partner. We started Advanced Kinetics after I got out of Major League Baseball. I was in baseball for 7 full seasons over the span of 10 years, so I got a lot of experience working with a ton of different athletes along the way, and really loved learning and specializing in this awesome population. So I'm excited to share with you guys what we got.
And side note, Angela and her family are also a Catchers U family, so it's really exciting to see all the different people that we get to work with from Catchers U, and then also being able to grow and expand our knowledge base from the people that work with us. So what we're going to do now is Angela's going to kind of run us through a couple of things that we can do pregame, and kind of think of it as your team's getting there maybe an hour 15 before the game. Now you can get there about 15-20 minutes before that and kind of get these stretches going to help activate yourself and get ready for the game. We're going to let her demonstrate a lot of them so that you can see how they're supposed to look, and then we'll do a couple so that you guys can laugh at me, because mobility is not my friend at the moment.
Awesome. Well, hopefully all of you guys are doing some type of dynamic warm-up when you're with your teams on the field. There's a variety of different things in terms of dynamic warm-up that you can do. The whole idea before a game is not to do static things. You want to do things that are dynamically moving yourself and getting yourself into the position and activating the muscles that you want. So some of the quick ones that I like specifically, especially for you guys that need to get that hip mobility going, I'm going to demonstrate a couple of those for the dynamic warm-up, okay? Hamstrings are really important. So one of the things we always want to do is a hamstring scoop, okay? So leg is straight out, toe is up. You're driving your hips back to get the length of the hamstring, and then you're scooping forward and coming up. And then you just step and scoop with both legs, okay? As if I'm walking forward down a line, okay? The next one I like.
Real quick on that one, Angela, I see, because I can show you how most kids do that.
Right.
So they'll go to do their scoop, and this is what I usually see when they go this.
Yep.
Right? They stay kind of like on the front. They don't necessarily, kind of like you were saying, like they don't understand the...
And then, like what you just did, you rounded your back.
Right.
You didn't drive your hips back. So it's important to drive the hips back to get the length of the hamstring. And you really want to be able to feel that hamstring elongate.
Right. And I think that's, because that's so important, because kids, they, again, understand how the movement works. That way you're actually doing it right versus just kind of street sweeping when you walk. And
a lot of times when I see these kids go through the dynamic warm-up, Jack, they just don't put any effort into it. And they don't realize how important it really is. And so this is one of those things as you get older, you're not going to just be able to show up at the field and do your work. Like as we get older, your body naturally loses water content, you get stiffer, so it takes a lot more effort to get going. So if you start these and put the effort in now, it just makes that so much easier, and you as an athlete are just going to improve, way on a farther, higher trajectory than any other athlete. So the warm-ups are really important. So take them seriously and try to do them correctly with the right form. The other thing I think is really good for catchers is to get that lateral hip movement opened up. And doing that through a lateral lunge is really important. And getting deep into that lateral lunge is what you guys need to do as catchers. So coming down and sinking really deep into that lunge and coming back out of it. And you can do this lunge to one side and then lunge to the other side. And it's not one of those things where you're doing kids kind of do this, or they kind of come out to the side. The goal, if you're doing it looking from the side, is to, again, drive your hip back and really sit and load into your glute and really get that adductor to stretch out on the opposite side. But then getting this glute to fire and getting this leg warmed up, because this is where your power comes from when you're popping up out of your stance. You want to get quick out of your stance to be able to make a throwdown. You got to get your glutes to fire. So back and forth in that lateral lunge, and really sinking deep into that hip and loading into your glute is super important.
The other thing I noticed is that you keep your feet completely in the ground. You're not shifting to your toes or your heels. And I think that's also something that's very important to make sure.
mobility of your hip is important. A lot of kids, to get into those positions, like to turn their feet out. You turn your feet out because your mobility going into external rotation is there, but your mobility into internal rotation is not there. So keeping your feet straight is going to help to loosen up that back hip to get the internal rotation, because we know that internal rotation of the hip is just as important as external rotation of the hip when it comes to throwing. You have to have both mobilities in order to properly drive your hips through and power through your hips. So keeping the feet straight is also a really important component of this. You want to make sure you get that internal rotation down, okay? The other one I really like is called the world's greatest stretch, because it is the world's greatest stretch. You're going to come down, touch your toes, start the hamstring, then you're going to walk out, and then you have one foot that comes up, and you're going to rotate, okay? And then you come back out, and you want to rotate to the other side. And then you walk it back, okay? And this is something you can do just walking. You would just walk straight out, come back up. And doing that gets everything opened up between your hips, getting into that nice hip flexion, which is really important when you guys squat down. Then it starts to get that rotation movement of your spine. You guys as throwers have to be able to rotate your spine. You have to have that hip-shoulder separation in order to develop the power, and what I like to call winding corkscrew. Because every time you wind up the corkscrew and you release it, you release a lot of power. So if you have good rotation in your spine, you're going to start to develop a lot more power, okay? So again, I'll do it from the side this time. You're going to walk down, come all the way out, foot up by your hand, twist and rotate. And this is really a great one to kind of loosen up everything along the whole body. And then you walk back, okay? And that's all of these so far can just easily be put right into your dynamic warm-up. The last one I want to do is to work on some of that hip internal and external rotation. This one is not something that you're going to walk through like your dynamic warm-up. This is something you should probably sit before you get in your gear and you're getting ready to go catch. You're going to sit on the ground, and you can do this anywhere. You want your two legs to be in 90-90, so hip and knee at 90-90 degrees, okay? So you're going to start here, and then you're going to rotate and come here, okay? With this, you want to get a nice core engagement, arms out to the side, because this also, you don't want to use your arms to balance. You got good core control, you're going to be able to switch back and forth. And then it's also working on that rotational mobility. So back and forth, stretch out those hips, getting that core engaged as well. That's a really good one to get those hips moving.
So now what we're going to do is kind of go over some common moves or situations you're going to be in throughout a game, so that Andrew's going to kind of just watch how my body's moving and what I'm utilizing, or what I need to utilize maybe a little bit more for certain moves. And then we'll be able to take those movements and then also help you kind of focus on what we're going to go over with our post-game recovery as well. So number one, for most catchers, right, you're going to just get into your normal receiving stance, right? You're going to be engaged. You're going to be back, okay? We talk about kind of relaxing this here. Tricep is going to be out in front of the knee. That way I have full range of motion with my shoulder. My shoulder is what's going to be doing a lot of my movement to the ball, right? Pre-pitch, okay? Notice from my stance, okay? My feet are in the ground. My butt is back. I want to make sure that I'm in a good position right there. So that right there, what I usually watch as for a coach, is I'm always trying to see if we're starting to tip and we're shifting the weight, being the strain or the load of the movement, being on the front side of the leg versus the back side of the leg. If we're on the back side of the leg, we're in a stronger position, we're able to throw harder, we're able to move a little bit better. So just kind of focusing on making sure that I'm in that setup. Hence why a lot of guys and ladies like using the one knee setups, because our one knee setups are super friendly to our load management. All right, and so I'm kind of excited because these are some things that I've been teaching, and I kind of want to see from a movement standpoint, you know, your thoughts as well. So one knee down. A lot of people are very aggressive in their thoughts about how this limits your mobility or your ability to move back behind the plate. So I agree, if we're in an incorrect one knee setup, we do lose a lot of mobility, but I want to see what you're thinking on. So there's some things that we teach that I think make it a lot easier for us to move. And our goal is to be able to do everything out of our one knee setup. That means receive, block, and throw. So the first thing that we really focus on, I'm gonna go glove side knee down to start, because that's the one that most kids will do. When our leg goes down, we always put the inside part of our leg on the ground, and we try to get this inside ankle on the ground as well, and we point our toe out. So we're not in a quote-unquote sprinter stance where our toes in the ground, our heels facing. My thought process is because it kind of opens the hip a little bit, so it keeps me kind of neutral, kind of like I am on 2 feet,
Yeah.
versus kind of closing this hip off and then kind of getting rigid. The other thing that we try to do is on the leg that's up. So my right leg, I'm going to have that as high as it would be if I was on 2 feet in a traditional stance. So what I'm not going to do is I don't want to be sitting there like this, right, or super deep where I'm out here. I want to make sure that my ankle's on the ground, my heel's in the ground on this side, and so that when I can give my target and I'm out in front, I still have that same spacing, that same ability to see, everything like that out in front. Another small thing that we try to do is our shoulder, we always want to make sure it's ahead of this shoulder. So we always keep our left knee slightly in front, or at least even, depending on your mobility, with our right knee, so I can be out in front. So now, especially if I'm in a position where I need to block, I'm going to be a little more active on my right side, so that if I need to block, I can clear, right? And if I need to throw, I can actually get out of that stance without having to make some kind of movement, right, to get myself back online.
Well, the one thing I see, so if you go back into that stance, Jack, the one thing I see that could potentially be a problem for kids that want to get into this stance is the ability to have the proper mobility of that knee down side. So if you see where Jack's knee is right now and where his foot position is, this requires internal rotation and of the hip, as the knee is coming down, but the foot is actually rotated. So that can be a complicated movement for that hip. So the mobility there needs to be there properly in order for you to be able to get into that position comfortably. Otherwise, catchers might end up feeling like some cramping in their hamstring or cramping in their glute situation.
This is something that we see a lot, where this foot kind of gets underneath, and then we get lower on this side, we kind of get bunched up. That's what I see when kids get tired. They do that, or they kind of stay like this, and then they sit on that heel. So their foot, their cleat almost becomes their knee saver.
Right. So with that case, then this becomes a stability issue. So not only do you have to have the proper mobility to be in this position, but if you're getting weak and tired and sitting back like that, that's your compensation for not being able to maintain the position. So that's where we look at, you need some more glute strength, and you definitely need some more core engagement to be able to pop out of that position and to move out of that and move quickly and transition from that position to whatever you need to do. So those kids that are getting tired in this position, that's where we need to start beefing up our core and beefing up our glute strength.
She means getting stronger, not beefing up like this. We got to make sure. We're staying as athletic as possible in how we build our body. The other one that I want to do, and this is something that we use a lot from a progression standpoint in a lot of our movements for throwing, is we do a lot of right knee or throwing side knee down, and we have the same concept. Our right leg, right, our ankle is in the ground, also making sure that our foot is still behind our knee. Sometimes we'll see kids get wide and their foot will kind of slide out a little bit in this position. And I think that's probably because they're super flexible.
Yeah.
Because this is very uncomfortable for me to do. But
it also puts a lot of pressure on the knee.
On the knee, yeah. So you see this where that ankle is on the ground again. I'm here. I'm in a good setup. And we work on, because one thing that we try really hard to do is when we're throwing, we try to load without lose. And so what I mean by that is we're going to try to load our lower body, we're going to try to load our scap, we're going to try to load everything, but we don't want to lose ground. We're not necessarily worried about, in my opinion, we're not trying to gain distance. We're just trying to get connected as fast as possible. So like the coach's comment of the coaching cue that's been forever is gain ground, gain ground. I like gaining ground versus losing ground, but I really want to be able to load and then get my foot kind of right underneath me. So I am going to gain ground, but I'm not going to gain distance. I don't want to jump out. When I go, I want to be able to get myself kind of into the ground and connected, like you were talking about earlier. All of our stretches were to get us on that back side so that when I go to throw, now I'm connected with this movement, and now I can be on top and be efficient on my throw down. So like our progression of, the reason why I like this so much is I feel like it helps us with the level change. Mm-hmm. So we actually do come up kind of gradual versus a lot of kids being on two, they'll pop up and then try to spin. They work two directions, where this is kind of, it allows me to get squared at the second, but at the same time, stay connected and be as powerful as possible in that position.
A really good exercise that you can do to help with that is I like to teach kids how to stack the barrel to engage their core properly, which is something that, catchers sometimes when they come out of that position, instead of being in this nice neutral position where your barrel is nice and stacked, they end up with their pelvis dumped forward. And then when your pelvis is dumped forward in this, your core and your muscles in the front are elongated, which then they don't have the ability to contract and generate power. And the same thing with your glutes. Your glutes are now on stretch, which then changes that length-tension relationship of the muscle. So you can't engage the glutes to power through and get that power from the lower. So when we teach kids how to engage their core properly, instead of having the barrel dumped forward, and if you look at your core, this is like your pelvic floor, and this is your diaphragm and your rib cage. If you're in this dumped forward position where your barrel is open, we tell kids just try to get that barrel stacked together. So stack it together, that way you're in this nice engaged posture here, and as you come out of your stance, you're really connected here, which then allows your glutes to fire really well and get you a little bit more power to make your throw down. And it gets you out of that stance a lot faster because you're not heavily relying on your quads to push yourself up. You're getting the movement from your core and your glutes.
Stack the barrel.
Stack the barrel.
That's going to be a staple saying now in Catcher's U. So I really like that. I like that confident. We always say use our core. Use your core more. And it's like I don't understand what that means.
And I'm not saying suck it in.
Right.
Like I don't want you to suck in. Imagine you're going number 2, right? This is what I tell kids. We are naturally meant to engage our core from front to back. We're not meant to suck in one muscle in the core because all of these muscles are connected together. So when I tell you to stack the barrel, you're getting a belly pressure that's coming out, so you're contracting the muscles outward, okay? So the best cue I can give kids is pretend like you're going number 2. When you go number 2, you push out. You don't suck in, right? So you get that pressure building outward, and naturally that just stacks your barrel and gets really solid through your core.
Even you guys who think it comes out like roses and cotton candy. All right, so understand that force and that ability and that use of the core is something that we can utilize throughout the course of the game. All right, so now Angela's going to run us through some post-game, and we're going to take it from here. Remember, this is just as important as before the game, what you're doing during the game. What you do post-game is going to allow you to feel good enough to give the same type of athletic effort for your next contest.
Right. One of the things that a lot of kids and people think that is contraindicated to, warm down and cool down stuff is that when you're sore, you should take a rest and not do anything. But active recovery is the best for your body to kind of increase the blood flow, get rid of the lactic acid, and really get those muscles flushed out so that you actually recover faster. So doing some post-game stuff is hugely important. And even spending a little extra time the next day if you're sore. Starting seasons now, everyone's getting into it. You're going to be putting on a heavy load. You're going to start to get really sore really fast. Putting that extra effort into the recovery is going to make the next day and your performance the next day just that much better. We always feel better when we activate our muscles, and that increases blood flow, that flushes all that gunk out of our body and out of our system so that you can perform well. And that, goes along with also proper recovery in terms of nutrition, drinking a lot of water, get yourself some protein, have a good post, game or practice meal, so that will help promote and replenish all the nutrition that your body just lost from your activity. So going into post-game stuff, we want to do a little bit of active movement to keep the blood flowing, nice and gentle on the system, but now you can add in some more static stretches, okay? One of the things that catchers definitely need is ankle mobility. So doing some stretching for your ankles and to maintain the mobility in your ankles and your calves is going to be important. So a really good exercise that you can do statically for your ankles to maintain that mobility is come into a half kneel position, okay? You can even do this standing with one leg straight and a foot up on a box or up on a bench. But we're going to be working on hinging through our ankle and getting this ankle to bend forward, because if you don't have the ankle mobility to get down in your stance here, you're going to be up on your toes. When you're up on your toes, you're not going to have enough power and engagement in your glutes. So to be able to be in this position, that ankle has to bend. So if you're having trouble being in this position, you got to get your ankle mobility better. And that could be, the actual joint not moving, or it could be that you're just simply tight in your calves. When kids start to grow, especially around that middle school age, sometimes their bones grow way faster than their muscles can lengthen at the same time. So you get really tight. And so we really try to get these kids between the ages of 13 and 16 to focus on that flexibility, because you'll lose mobility in your joints just because your muscles are tight. So making sure you keep up on those stretches is going to be huge. All right, so just in this half kneel position, you want to keep your knee tracking over your toe. You do not want that to come inward. So from this position, I don't want my knee to go like that. I want it to be straight and come over my toe. And I'm looking at just lunging forward over that until I feel the stretch in the back, keeping my heel down, and then come back out of it. The great thing about this active stretch is that not only am I stretching my right, but this takes some balance and coordination and activity of muscles to keep me from falling over. So you're getting all those same muscles that we need to power us through when we're working and behind the plate, then also working on the flexibility. So doing that 30 times every day post-game is going to be great just to maintain that flexibility, okay? Even pre-game, this is something you can work on to get that mobility going, okay? All right, so now we're going to go back to our 90-90 position, okay? So let's start this way. So hip 90, knees 90 on both. One of these great stretches I like to call prone twist. We're going to come down, and I'm going to twist my body down to the ground, okay? And this is working on stretching out the rotation. And then when I'm in this position, I'm feeling a nice stretch on the back side, and I'm feeling a nice stretch on the front side here of my hip, okay? And if you get really good and flexible at this, you can straighten out that back leg and really get a good stretch. I like this better for boys and men, because a lot of times people tell you to do the pigeon stretch, which coming straight on, I'm going to come into this position here. And even for me, a female that has pretty good mobility, this is a really hard position for me to get into. And like most things, when something's hard, we tend to avoid it. So a lot of people can't get to this position. So this one is a really good one to start increasing that mobility, okay? And then you can work your way into that other pigeon stretch. And that's also going to be good for your internal, external mobility. The last one I want you to do, we want to start to open up and keep everything moving post-game, because being down in that crouched position is hard on our body, and so you want to keep everything open afterwards in case you started to get tight and fatigued. You can do a tripod rotation, modified from what the standard yoga position is. We're just going to come here, and we're going to rotate, which is going to stretch this back side, and then we're going to open up, which is going to stretch into the other direction. And so you can just gently rotate back and forth and just get everything stretched out before you head home, okay? So a couple really good stretches. Just sit on the ground, take 5 minutes. get those hips working a little better, keep the ankle mobile, and then you can head home.
A lot of stuff that we covered today. We went over pregame. We talked about stuff going on during the game, and then we also talked about stuff post-game. All three helping you be the best that you can be. So, like we talked about, sometimes it's not the sexiest, right? Working on mobility, ankles. Some of us who aren't very mobile are probably a little embarrassed. So we're scared that we don't want to move. We don't want to get made fun of, right? But those are the little things that are going to help us be the best player and the best catcher that we can be. So really appreciate your time today, Angela. It was a lot of fun. If there's anything that you kind of want to say in closing, we'd love to hear it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. This has been fun. I love working with this athletic population. I feel like it's so underdeserved and underserved properly. So this is super fun for me. But I think the biggest message I can say to you guys is take the warm-up and pull down seriously. A lot of people don't. And really continue to focus on the mobility and your stability, that balance in building your core. You know, some things aren't always so sexy to do, but if you want to be the athlete that is able to maintain a healthy career and excel above, you know, maybe somebody you're competing with or earn a spot on a team with, doing these little things are really going to be beneficial for your longevity and the health of your body.
Very cool, very cool. So today's YouTube episode covered a lot. We're going to put all of Angela's business and her social media stuff in the post below. So check them out, Advanced Kinetics, right here in McLean. And super excited. It's actually right across the street from Capital One Ballpark, which is going to be the home of the Potomac Baseball League. So there will be about 7 college teams that will be out in this area. I guarantee you a bunch of them will be in this office.
Awesome. Love it. Can't wait to see them.
All right. So we'll talk to you guys later. See you soon.
See ya.